Now, I've been dealing the Google Pixel Watch 4 for the past month, and I've been having a pretty decent experience with it. It's an iterative upgrade from the Pixel 3, which was really the only way to experience raw Google Wear OS in its native fashion. And the Pixel 4 is no exception. It has some minor upgrades in terms of internal processing, better battery life, as well as some minor tweaks here and there to make it a better overall package. But how does it compare against the Samsung Galaxy Watch 8, as well as the latest generation of Apple Watch, the Series 11. Now in this comparison, we're going to go through 11 different categories, including design, comfort, durability, display, processors, UI/OS/AI, connectivity, sensors/health tracking, fitness tracking, sleep tracking, as well as battery life, to ultimately determine which smartwatch is more capable and right for you. Now, before we get into the categories, I just want to mention the upgrades on the Pixel 4 compared to the Pixel 3. The first one is the display. It's the same size and resolution, but it's upped its peak brightness up to 3000 nits compared to 2000 nits. The internals are about 10% faster, and you also get Bluetooth 6 for better multi-device connectivity, on top of the fact that you get emergency SOS satellite communication built into the watch, as well as better battery life and faster charging. The Watch 4 doesn't really change all that much in terms of core design. It's still rounded off top to bottom, and it still has that digital crown interface, much like the Apple Watch, which is nice to see. It is, however, slightly more repairable. iFixit did a breakdown analysis, and looks like you can actually replace the battery and some of the internal components a little bit easier than the previous generation, which is nice to see. Now, firstly, I just want to go over price. Now, the Pixel Watch 4 and the Samsung are starting at the same price point, around $350 for the smallest entry-level versions. The Apple Watch for the cheapest variant is going to start at $399. We specifically have the 46 version of the Apple Watch with the aluminum case and the Sport Loop, which is around $430. Now we have the Galaxy Watch 8 44mm version. This is the standard model with the non-rotating bezel, unlike the Classic. And we have the 45mm version of the Pixel Watch 4, which is also around $400. Now obviously pricing is going to vary depending upon what model you get of the watches, where you are in the world, and if you're getting the Wi-Fi or LTE versions. Now, as far as design and comfort, obviously you're looking at circular watches on the Android side and a squircle or square watch design on the Apple Watch. In terms of what actually feels the most comfortable on the wrist, for me personally, it has to be the Google Pixel 4. It has rounded off corners and it's a round face watch. It just feels great on the wrist. You can move your wrist in any direction, up and down, and the flexion points are excellent. There's no pinching areas, and certainly to sleep with, this makes a huge deal. So as far as comfort goes, with the integrated watch bands and the shape of the Google Pixel Watch, it's certainly the most comfortable, even though it's not the lightest or thinnest watch out of the three. The Apple Watch is slightly heavier at 37 grams for our 46mm version. It has very nice rounded, tapered, squared off edges, and even though it's a square shape, it doesn't pinch too much onto your skin, especially when you go up on your wrist, and it is still very comfortable. Maybe not as comfortable as the Pixel Watch, but definitely more comfortable than the new Galaxy Watch 8, which utilizes a kind of squircle case, and the watch face itself is so circular. The edges on the Galaxy Watch are fairly sharp and kind of harsh in my opinion, and it's certainly the most uncomfortable on the wrist, even though it's the lightest one out of the three. Now, as far as durability goes, all three of these watches have an aluminum case construction. They're IP6X, either X or 68 certified, and all of these can be submerged underwater down to about 50 meters deep or 5 atmospheric pressures. The glass face, on the other hand, is all different materials. The Apple Watch uses an ion strengthened glass, which is, in my opinion, not that great and does scratch fairly easily. Maybe a little bit more durable than the Gorilla Glass 5, which is on the Google Pixel Watch, which is, in my opinion, is not all that great and all that scratch or durable. The best one definitely has to be on the Galaxy Watch 8, which utilizes sapphire crystal glass. It's pretty much the hardest substance you can get on a smartwatch and certainly the most durable. Now moving on, let's talk about displays. All three of these use an OLED panel, so they're great in terms of general contrast ratio from white to black, good color rendition, but the brightest one is actually the Google Pixel Watch 4. It's 3000 nits compared to 2000 nits on the other two watches, and that's definitely going to make a big difference when you're out, especially in a very sunny environment. The overall pixel density on all these watches are kind of in the same ballpark, around 320 ppi, and they all deliver very crisp looking watch faces, images, and text. Obviously, the Apple Watch is a square design, which kind of mimics a miniature smartphone, and in my view, it has the best overall screen real estate, as well as UI for displaying the most amount of information on screen. And in situations where you need to type something or see a lot of data on your watch face, I think it's the better shape for a mini screen compared to a circular shape, which definitely looks good, but is not all that practical. Now, as far as the internal specs, we'll throw up them on screen, but the Apple Watch is utilizing the same SoC as the previous generation Series 10, which is the S10 chip. It's a 64-bit dual-core processor with a 4-core neural engine. The Galaxy Watch 8 utilizes an Exynos W1000 3nm pentacore processor with a dedicated MIUI G68 GPU. And on the Google Pixel Watch 4, you have the Snapdragon W5. This is the second iteration of that chip, and it's a quad-core CPU with a dedicated Adreno GPU. As far as using the interface and the snappiness of each of the watches, they all do a good job of loading up applications, notifications, and multitasking, and I can't really say one is all that much faster than the next. As far as RAM and storage goes, both the Android watches have 2 GB of RAM with 32 GB of long-term storage, and the Apple Watch has 64 GB of long-term storage, which is great for storing your podcasts and music, and 1 GB of RAM, which doesn't seem all that much, but it's actually quite optimized for the operating system, and I didn't find really any issues with multitasking or loading up several different applications at the same time. Now, as far as the OS goes, we're using watchOS 26 on the Apple Watch and Wear OS 6 on the Android smartwatches. Obviously, the Samsung is utilizing the One UI Samsung interface in its 8th iteration. Now, the Samsung UI isn't too cumbersome compared to Google's standard Wear OS. It basically utilizes some different aesthetic cues, and the menu coloring and shapes are a little bit different, uses an oval shape, and although it doesn't maximize the screen real estate or the UI all that much better than the standard Google Wear OS, it is a passable experience and actually adds quite a bit of functionality on top of the native Google Wear OS. Now, the Pixel Watch 4 with the native OS is definitely a much cleaner interface, definitely feels less cluttered, although it does feel quite a lot more bare bones in terms of core feature sets. You don't have the number of gesture controls as you have on Apple and Samsung side, not to mention the assistive touch features, which is great for accessibility reasons, especially if you want to have access and full control of the watch without having to use the touchscreen. Now, third-party app library on both Apple and Android is fairly extensive these days, and you can pretty much find an equivalent app in both circumstances depending on your specific needs, although there will be exceptions to that depending upon what apps you specifically want. Now, for me personally, the watchOS 26 is probably the best operating system on any smartwatch. As we mentioned earlier, it does maximize the amount of information that it can display on a square screen compared to a round screen. And on top of that, I do like the multitasking implementation, and the overall interface for all the apps are very well thought out and detailed in terms of all the metrics you can see at a given instance. Plus, there's a decent amount of customization options on the Apple side, and you can really tailor the watch for your specific needs in pretty much all facets. Now, as far as the voice and AI assistant goes, on the Apple side, we're obviously using Siri, Bixby, and Gemini on the Samsung, and Gemini on the Google Pixel Watch. All the AI assistants are basically pared down versions of what you would find on the smartphones, and they do a decent job of doing basic tasks such as setting up calendar dates, making a note, opening up certain application, asking weather and news headlines. But if you ask it too complicated of a question, it'll just refer you to the web or ask you to use your smartphone. These AI assistants are great for basic tasks, but if you're expecting LLM quality on your smartwatch, this is not the year for that. Now, as far as wireless connectivity goes, all of them have the basics in terms of Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 6 connectivity, but they do have different wireless mobile connectivity options. On the Samsung, you're basically looking at basic LTE with no satellite emergency SOS connectivity at this point. On the Apple Watch side, you do get 5G mobile connectivity, which is actually the fastest out of the three in terms of mobile wireless speeds, but there's no satellite SOS on the basic Apple Watch, so you have to get the Ultra 3 to get satellite access, versus on the Google Pixel Watch 4. It's LTE, but it actually has satellite SOS communication. So if you're out in the boonies and need to do an SOS call, you can actually contact a satellite, which is exclusive on the Pixel Watch out of the other two. Now, as far as tracking your basic health and sensors go, all three of these can do the basics. And these days, the basics include having a pedometer, which is going to track your day-to-day steps, having obviously a fitness tracker for advanced heart rate monitoring, having the ability to track your sleep, detect falls, track your menstrual cycles for females, measure blood O2 levels, have the ability to record an ECG, as well as detect AFib symptoms. Now, as far as some of the unique health tracking capabilities of each watch, well, in terms of the Apple Watch side, they've introduced official hypertension certification, so it'll monitor your day-to-day life and basically tell you if you have potential symptoms of hypertension, and that's FDA approved in the US and pending approval in other regions. You also get 24-hour hearing monitoring, so if you're in a loud environment, it'll let you know if you're going to cause any kind of hearing damage. On top of if you're a diabetic in Canada or in the US and using the Dexcom system, which is a wireless Bluetooth patch that connects to your smartphone, well, it's only natively supported on the Apple Watch. The app works great with that, so you can check your glucose levels on the Apple Watch. You can do it on the Android side, but there's kind of a workaround. Unfortunately, there's no official way to monitor your glucose levels with the Dexcom on Android, versus that's a lot easier on the Apple Watch. The fall detection is also a little bit more advanced on the Apple Watch. It'll actually measure your asymmetry when you're walking or standing, check your balance and your overall steadiness, and will actually preemptively get the SOS ready even before you make a dramatic fall. So that's great if you're elderly or disabled. Now, the Galaxy Watch 8 actually has the most amount of capabilities when it comes to health tracking. It measures the most amount of markers, including things like advanced glycation end products. These are actually sugar damage, fats, and proteins, and will result in accelerating aging as well as becoming more risk of advantageous diseases. You get a basic score of 155 to about 722, I believe. I get around 400 points. Samsung actually gives you a number of advice to improve your AGE scores, typically by getting better sleep, exercising, eating more fruits and vegetables, and boiling or steaming your food. You also get an anti-dioxide sensor, which utilizes the optical heart rate monitor, and you place your thumb over it, and you get a score of 0 to 100, and this will basically tell you how much antioxidants are in your bloodstream. It's obviously a guess, but you can obviously improve it by eating more fruits and vegetables, like we all need to do. You can also measure things like general stress and even blood pressure, which has been around for a couple of years, which you calibrate your heart rate monitor with a real blood pressure monitor. And with 3 different trials, you get a rough estimate of what your blood pressure will be like with a corresponding heartbeat. And lastly, you even have things like the body composition monitor, which will measure the amount of lean mass compared to fat you have. Obviously, this is not going to be 100% accurate, but it's a good tool to have nonetheless in your fitness journey. Now, the Google Pixel Watch 4 is fairly bare bones in terms of extra health monitoring parameters. It basically will do the basics as we listed earlier, which is fine, I think, for most people. But the only real thing that I saw is that it does have crash detection on top of the regular fall detection, which is something that the Apple Watch also has and that Samsung actually doesn't have, but it does have on the smartphones. But overall, as far as the winners goes on the health tracking side, I think Samsung definitely has a pretty decent lead over here, followed by Apple and the Pixel in last place. Now, moving on, let's talk about one of the most important categories for me, and that's fitness tracking. Now, the Apple Watch I've been using for decades now, it seems like, and one of the big advantages it has is that it's really great in terms of its auto detection capabilities, and it's quite advanced compared to the other watches. You can go on a run on a treadmill or outside, you can use a specific machine and it will definitely track your workout, no problem, versus that's not always the case on the other watches. In fact, the Apple Watch is pretty advanced where you could be out and about in a random area, encounter a circle track, and it will know that you're on a circle track within a couple of seconds, and you can select a specific lane and track a whole new workout right then and there. You could also be doing an elliptical or an assault bike run, and it will know that exactly. Plus, if you're a triathlete, it will actually do the transitions automatically from swimming, running, and cycling, versus on the Samsung Watch, you're going to have to press a button to do that. And on the Pixel Watch, it doesn't even have a triathlon mode. Now, the GPS accuracy and heart rate monitoring is pretty much on par on all three of these, so there's really no difference there. But I really do think that the Apple Watch, it gives you the best metrics with the square screen, and now you can customize your workout views. You can do that on Google Wear OS as well, but not to the level of extent that we can on the Apple Watch. Furthermore, if you're looking for great workout videos, I really do think that Apple Fitness Plus, even though it's a extra expense every month, has quite a lot of value. Excellent workout programs that has probably the best hardware and software integration. You can see your split times, heart rate monitor directly onto the video feed itself, and that is a feature that's still exclusive to the Apple Watch. Now, as far as fitness tracking with the Samsung goes, it pretty much matches most of the features we encounter on the Apple Watch. It's just not as reliable in terms of auto detecting, but once you get going, it is a pretty good experience, and certainly a lot more extensive fitness tracking capabilities and really great metrics on the app itself compared to the Google Pixel Watch, and even sometimes what Apple is offering as well. So in terms of analysis of your data, the Samsung is doing a really great job of that. And there's also a new running coach on the Galaxy Watch 8, which will ask you to do an initial run, and based on that data, it'll ask you if you want to run a 5K, 10K, marathon, half marathon, and build you a specific workout program to that end goal. So it follows a basic linear periodization training scheme, which is fairly time tested, and it will probably work. And I've done a few of the workouts already, and it seems like a pretty solid way to improve your running performance. Furthermore, I like the fact that Samsung doesn't force you to buy a premium subscription for your fitness, since many of the workout videos are free and available within their health app. And unlike the Google Pixel 4, which I don't think Google really cares too much about fitness, since they outsource most of it to Fitbit. And Fitbit is a great app, don't get me wrong, but just the overall workout integration from the hardware and software isn't the same extent as we encounter with certainly the Apple side, pretty much on par with Samsung. But it really does feel like an added thing that they could easily just integrate and not spend too much money on. And fitness really seems like kind of an afterthought or a secondary priority on the Google Pixel Watch, versus it doesn't feel like that on the Samsung and Apple side. Now moving on, let's talk about sleep tracking. Now all three of these will do basic sleep tracking, and when you're done with your sleep, you can analyze the level of sleep stages that you were in throughout the night, and they'll also give you a sleep score, which is a new thing on the Apple side. But which one actually has the best overall sleep tracking experience? I'd probably say the Samsung. Even though it's the most uncomfortable to use, ironically, the software is the best. They've been tracking the sleep the longest on their smartwatches, and it really shows. The app is super extensive. Not only do you get a detailed breakdown on what your sleep was like throughout the night, but it'll give you specific metrics on sleep latency, time of bedtime, as well as how long you spent in bed compared to how long you actually got some actual quality sleep. And it'll give you really good practical advice on how to improve your sleep with the sleep coach. Beyond that, it will also give you a snore detection, which is unique to the Samsung, on top of measuring your blood O2, heart rate, and skin temperature. Furthermore, both Samsung and Apple have made it pretty clear that if they detect symptoms of sleep apnea, they'll give you a notification. The Pixel Watch may or may not have that feature, but I haven't encountered it thus far. Now, sleep tracking on the Apple Watch and Pixel is very similar. They'll give you your basic sleep scores, give you a visualization of your sleep stages, and even give you some basic advice on how to improve your sleep. The extensive metrics are not as extensive as we find on Samsung's side, but they do a good job of basically tracking your day-to-day sleep, and good enough for most people, but certainly not as good as Samsung. Now, last but not least, let's talk about battery life. Now, the battery on the Google Pixel 4 is actually the largest capacity, 455 milliamp hour. It also has the fastest charging capabilities. You can get pretty much 95% in around 32 minutes, and in 15 minutes, you're going to get about 50% charge. That's about twice as fast as both Samsung and Apple. Now, based on my experience with the Google Pixel Watch 4, on an average battery life from pretty much 100 to mere 0%, I get at least 35 to 38 hours with always on mode and up to 50 hours in power saving mode. Now the Galaxy Watch 8 also has pretty decent battery life, a little bit lower than the Pixel Watch, but not by a large margin since the battery size is quite similar. I can get around 35 hours on always on and over 40 hours in power saving mode. The Apple Watch Series 11 is the worst in terms of battery life. It also has the smallest battery capacity. And on a normal day, you can get at least 24 to 26 hours with the always on and around 32 hours in power saving mode. So certainly the worst in terms of battery life and charging compared to the other Android watches. Now, in summary, if I had the choice between these three watches, which watch would I use for the entire year? I am pretty much agnostic to any smartphone platform since I use a Google, Samsung, and Apple phone pretty much on a constant basis, almost equally. So for me personally, I'd still go with the Apple Watch because of the fact that it's just easier to use. From that interface, getting all that information on the screen that's very well designed and lays out information very clearly and plainly, is still very comfortable to use on a day-to-day basis and has excellent health and fitness tracking capabilities. Yes, there's some downsides in terms of battery life and some of the advanced health tracking features that we find on Samsung, and even the coaching capabilities are not there, but I think it makes up for it from a holistic experience standpoint. In second place, I would probably go with the Samsung over the Pixel Watch. It definitely feels a little bit more complete, has a much wider array of feature sets and some advanced features that is really unique to the Galaxy Watch. And I really don't think that the One UI interface really takes away from it too much. Native Wear OS is nice, it's simple and clean to use, but it just lacks a lot of features that I've gotten used to on the Galaxy Watch 8. So for me personally, I put the Pixel Watch in last place and the Samsung pretty much in the middle. But really on that, guys, that's really it. I definitely have to know what you guys think of all three of these watches. Which do you think is the best overall smartwatch for you personally? And if you're in the market for a new smartwatch, what are you thinking of getting? Love to know what you guys think. In the descriptions down below, you'll find information about everything we've talked about. And if you haven't done so already, please make sure to like and subscribe and have post notifications turned on. In the meantime, we'll see you real soon in the next one. Take care.